Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm grateful for the interest that the committee, under the leadership of Chairman Graham, has in this most pressing matter. The fact that religious freedom is deeply rooted in American life is beyond question. But as a nation, we've recognized that religious freedom is not just an American right, it's a human right, not granted by governments, but rather to be guarded by governments. And I want to step back, going from the specific more to the general here in my testimony. Historically, the recognition and advancement of religious freedom as a universal human right has been a bipartisan effort. It was Eleanor Roosevelt who chaired the drafting committee of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which, as Jay lined out, provides that people have the right to the freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Additionally, following the horror of the Holocaust, the international community established a legally binding treaty, the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. The treaty not only legally prohibits ratifying nations from engaging in genocide, but also binds them with an obligation to prevent genocide. The fundamental right to freedom of religion was again recognized as an inherent human right in the legally binding International Convention on Civil and Political Rights in 1966. America has not only expressed its commitment to uphold religious liberty through international law, but through federal statutes as well. Again, in a bipartisan manner, Congress passed the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, which states that, quote, "It shall be the policy of the United States to condemn violations of religious freedom and to promote and to assist other governments in the promotion of the fundamental right of the freedom of religion." While this fundamental human right deserves to be guarded in its own right, there are other tangible benefits for promoting religious freedom. There's a growing body of research that points to nations that protect religious freedom as being nations that have freer economic markets and therefore greater economic prosperity and stability, which leads to greater political stability. Religious freedom should be a top priority in foreign policy for a multitude of reasons. Despite both domestic and international obligations, though, the United States is failing to make religious freedom a priority. The growing indifference toward religious freedom is sending a dangerous message to the enemies of human rights. In its latest figures, the Pew Research Center reports that in 2013, Christians continued to be harassed in 102 countries, Muslims in 99 countries, and Jews in 77 countries. A 2014 list cataloged by Open Doors USA shows that persecution is increasing around the world, reaching historic proportions. Approximately 100 million Christians are now persecuted worldwide. While the brutal violence that we have seen in the Middle East has increased, it was not increased violence that was primarily responsible for the record levels of Christian persecution, but rather increased cultural marginalization, the more subtle type of persecution that makes daily life harder and harder for Christians. Last year, we were involved as we all witnessed the saga of the pregnant Sudanese mother, Maryam Ibrahim, being convicted and sentenced by her own government to die for her choice of faith. Shortly thereafter, the American public became aware of the murderous rampage of ISIS that targeted Yazidis because of what they believed, killed some Muslims because they held beliefs different than ISIS, and killed and persecuted Christians because of their religion. The Genocide Convention prohibits targeting a religious group for the purpose of killing its members, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children to other groups. And while one of these acts is all that's required to meet the definition of genocide under the convention, ISIS has probably engaged in all of them with respect to the Yazidis, Christians, and other religious groups. Over 20 years ago, President Clinton hesitated to take decisive action to stop genocide in Rwanda, which he avoided defining as genocide precisely due to the concern that the United States would then be obligated to do something if genocide was recognized. As a result, more than 1 million lives were lost. Several years later, President Clinton went to Rwanda and admitted his error. The Obama administration has been relatively silent, failing to speak clearly and forcefully in defense of Christians and other religious minorities. Mothers, fathers, and children, whether sentenced to die for their faith in Sudan, impaled by ISIS in Iraq, crucified in Syria, beheaded in Libya, or imprisoned in Iran. They are being targeted because of their faith. As a recent ISIS video from Libya made abundantly clear, it was not targeting 21 Egyptian citizens. It was targeting 21 people of the cross. Our silence only encourages those who work actively to diminish or even destroy this fundamental human right. America has both a legal and moral obligation to speak and act on behalf of religious freedom. We must once again find our voice to speak and our courage to act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.